Yeah, hello everyone. Nice to see so many people here. Welcome to today's Sea and Society talk with me, Eric Strömberg. And today's topic is the ecosystem-based marine spatial planning tool, Western Indian Ocean Symphony. The agenda for today looks like this, where background to WIO Symphony will be followed by the collaboration, development, and management of it, and in the end, a quick demonstration of what the tool can do. But first off, a bit about the speaker. I'm a 26-year-old student in the master's program Sea and Society here at the University of Gothenburg. My background is as a geographer, where GIS was a useful skill to learn. Last semester, during the fall, I did an internship with the WIO Symphony project for 20 weeks. And it has been really rewarding, both academically and professionally. And this talk today is somewhat the grand finale of the internship. My tasks and work contribution were mainly producing data, but also doing demonstrations and having technical trainings. And right now, I'm in the early stages of my master thesis, which will focus on climate refugia in the Swedish west coast, together with SWAM. First off, some background to what marine spatial planning is. Marine spatial planning processes and allocates spatial and temporal distributions of human activities in marine areas to achieve ecological, economic, and social objectives, and is somewhat a mix of planning, politics, and data. The political driver refers often to a sustainable blue economy, and spatial planning is also very data dependent, and without it, there wouldn't be any MSP. MSP is global and often works across boundaries. The MSP Global is the international guidance for countries doing MSP, and right now there are around 100 countries and territories having a MSP initiative. For the WIO region, MSP has come a long way, where the Seychelles and South Africa are the frontrunners. There are several sectors within MSP that have different interests and influence. Like in this hypothetical example, it is important to bear this in mind when conducting MSP. This decade now is the so-called decade of ocean science. It is somewhat the dawn of an era of digitalization, where marine spatial planning is still something kind of new and is dragged perfectly into this decade of ocean science. An important thing to keep in mind during this talk is data is important, and when it comes to MSP, especially the open kind. So a shout out to those below here that have contributed to WIO Symphony. And linking to the decade of ocean science is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that you've heard of, I'm sure. Goal number 14, life below water, might be the most obvious one here, connected to WIO Symphony, where it could work as a supported tool to conserve and sustain our oceans, seas, and marine resources for a sustainable development. But it could also be related to other goals, such as Goal 12, responsible consumption and production, with its waste and industry targets, or Goal 17, partnership for the goals, with its targets of collaborating and working together to prevent or mitigate human impacts on the environment. And now some background to the MSP process in Sweden that led to the creating of Symphony. The first MSP process in Sweden began in 2015, when different activities like shipping and energy were put together in what eventually became the original version of Symphony. It had an ecosystem-based approach, weighing the ecosystem components against these activities in order to protect them against negative impacts. Symphony is based on a study by Halpern et al. From 2008, where human impact is calculated against marine ecosystems or ecosystem components, thereby getting a result of cumulative impact ranging from very low impact to very high. The Swedish Symphony is based on an equation that you can see to the right, where cumulative impact is calculated as the sum of the product of all pressure effects from human activities on all the ecosystem components based on nature values, given the sensitivity of every ecosystem component to every pressure. So this is in turn based on a sensitivity matrix that describes the specific effect of each pressure on each ecosystem component. And the results of this are shown in the Symphony tool in maps, figures, or tables that you can see here to the right. So now with a set background with the Swedish version, how was the Swedish version turned into a Western Indian Ocean one? WIO Symphony started when the Nairobi Convention requested a tool and started coordinating the collaboration. A team from the Swedish Agency for Marine and Water Management, the Geological Survey of Sweden, and the Swedish University of Agricultural Sciences, and the University of Gothenburg put together a team that had experiences of developing the Swedish version of Symphony, and was all funded by SIDA. A technical working group that represents the 10 member states of the Nairobi Convention worked as regional experts in the work, but also adding scientific information and advice. The project has now been running for over 3 years with several working methods such as webinars, workshops, questionnaires, thematic groups, data collections, and modeling. The work process and development roles looks like this. In short, a large production of individual map layers was done to be put into the tool. A collaboration between the partners to gather data was processed into a harmonized map layer that was later reviewed. The tool developed in parallel where maps, sensitivity matrix here in the middle, and the tool were being built. The review process of this was mainly done through the WIO Symphony Shiny app, where people could review the maps and give input to them that could later be considered and maybe changed in the tool. The tool itself is also ecosystem-based, built on Halpern et al.'s principles of cumulative impact, like its Swedish counterpart. Environmental pressures are applied to ecosystem components, calculated with a sensitivity matrix, and given results shown in maps, figures, and tables. It is web-based to provide widespread access, and it has several functions that I will demonstrate later in a short demo. Although MSP should consider everything, it is almost impossible to put everything into a web-based tool. So WIO Symphony is therefore not perfect. Thus, we can say that all models are wrong, but many of them are very useful. Here is the general roadmap of the project through workshops and webinars throughout the years. The tool is now finally launched through an event in Port Elizabeth, South Africa, that we went to in October, and is now handed over to the Nairobi Convention. And along this way, there have been many questions and issues coming up, like these examples regarding trust, lack of data, funding, different kind of interests, etc. So these are the challenges that the collaboration stands for. There might be different interests among the partners and countries, often economic ones that can hinder collaboration and data sharing. There could also be challenges in trust when 10 countries work together with different agendas. And the data sharing and seeing benefits with regional MSP, not just national, is a continuous challenge because what your neighbor does might affect you. So it's important to really understand that. Data could also be sensitive, like with mining oil and gas between sovereign states. Different intentions for getting access to this kind of data and information could be sensitive as well, of course. And countries might have different policies and regulations hindering collaboration in this kind of project. The differences in available data and the will to contribute to it are other factors making this work difficult. And funding is also, of course, a permanent issue. Usually, almost everything boils down into trust when trying to come up with solutions to these issues. Belief in the purpose and the benefit of a tool like WIO Symphony is really important. Therefore, it is important also to have continuous close work, even if it requires online, like the past few years with the pandemic. However, there is another potential challenge because building relations and trust is easier when meeting in person. So therefore, workshops have been key to the success of WIO Symphony, along with the conferences, technical trainings, and soft and hardware installations. And lastly, an international technical tool requires more than just people of natural science. People that know communication, law, politics, and diplomacy in general are equally needed. So we recap here the development process and ask ourselves what will happen now. The management of the tool is now primarily in the Nairobi Convention's hands, with responsibilities of updates of map layers and maintenance of the tool, but of course with continuous consulting from the Swedish team. Before diving into a minor demonstration of the tool itself, we'll look at the production of the tool and the data behind it. First off, good data gives you a better product, and the more local it is, the better it can be. Most of the data used in WIO Symphony is open and available for free, and sometimes all you have to do is just ask for it. Data resolution was a challenge for the computing power. However, the tool uses a 1 kilometer cell grid. You can see it down here to the right, due to data limitations, not computing power. Besides open access data, modeling was another method for producing maps, using observations, prediction layers, and processing of existing layers through coding and GIS. And the final method was digitalization, or manual data collection, which I myself spent many weeks of my internship doing. It is kind of a basic work and time-consuming, but very effective with pretty accurate data. Artisanal fisheries, tourism, and coastal development were data produced with this method. So here is the sensitivity matrix for WIO Symphony that I've been mentioning. It is done by an expert panel, and it shows the cumulative impact that WIO Symphony is based on. To the left, we have our ecosystem components that the pressures on the top here are applied to. So if we, for example, take seabed mining here in the blue column, on cold water coral reefs here in the red column, and the mean sensitivity score will be 5.0 and is therefore catastrophic for the reef and thereby of high cumulative impact in the tool. So with how the tool operates behind the scenes, gone through, I will now demonstrate a short demo for you of the tool, and this is what the tool looks like on the web. Here is a toolbar with different functions. On the globe, here are areas of interest where you can use areas like the whole grid or for example, marine ecoregions, by selecting the polygon after pressing the eye to view them. You can also upload your own polygons, like national borders, for example, but we don't use that due to border disputes, for example. And you can also draw on your own area on this icon here. So moving on to the ecosystem components tab, where you can view layers and select the ones you want to work with. By clicking the info over here, you can view the metadata behind it with all the producers and the method done and all the sources. The pressure tab looks and works kind of the same as the ecosystem components one, where you can view all the layers here on the eye and select the ones you want to work with. The next tab calculates the cumulative impact after picking the ecosystem components and pressures that you want to work with. And this will show baseline results, as seen here outside of Tanzania, where the cumulative impact is high or low based on the impact scores. So around here and here and here is high cumulative impact compared to the blue areas. And the calculation will also create a report for you with the results like these diagrams here that will have a lot of statistics. For example, this final Sankey diagram that shows how much of the cumulative effect is done by a pressure on the ecosystem components. Another function is available is another algorithm that is called the rarity adjusted cumulative impact. And it is a way of giving more attention to the rare ecosystem components in the region, since other ones can become dominant in the calculation and shadow the rare ones. And this will give you a different result in the calculation report compared to the basic cumulative impact algorithm that we used or saw before. And creating scenarios is, in my opinion, the main useful thing in the tool. Let's say we want to work with this area here outside of Bemba Island in the WIO region here. We create a baseline calculation of the cumulative impact, and that will get these certain results, where artisanal fisheries is the pressure with the highest impact, and the coral reef fish is the ecosystem component with that are impacted the most. Then we can go back to the pressures that we went to before and decrease, for example, artisanal fisheries by 32% and shipping by approximately a third. But we also at the same time want to increase tourism sector in this area and aquaculture by over 10%. So now the MSP scenario we created will give us different results due to our changes compared to the baseline scenario. And with these two scenarios, we can finally make a comparison that is calculated between them to see the effects of our MSP plan. So what has happened when we decrease the shipping and fisheries, but increase the tourism and aquaculture. The cumulative impact has changed in both directions, but at different locations. The red areas might be here in the map here might be due to the increased tourism outside of urban areas, and the decreased activities like fishing and shipping turn green in the rest. However, the impact score increased overall by 88% with our MSP. You can also use the tool for finding suitable areas of added or new activities. For example, by increasing the renewable energy and pulsive noise as a constant here with 100%, which will cover the whole area instead of just a percentage increase of what already exists. We will get areas with lesser cumulative impacts from these pressures that can show areas that might be good to put up offshore renewable energy, like for example these 3 areas. So now with the demonstration done, there might be questions in mind like, what about this then? Why is this not in the tool? Is the data correct, etc.? And WIO Symphony is based on a scientific method where there could be uncertainties for sure. The lack of data and the quality of it is a major limitation when it comes to MSP like this, and could give a weaker model. There are also questions regarding the socioeconomic factors in MSP, like poverty and gender. This is in practical terms hard to put into a technical web-based tool and is not yet available. However, there have been done case studies where they incorporate these factors in MSP and can be found on SWAM's website. Besides the current handover to the Nairobi Convention, future development lies in continuing to update and maintain WIO Symphony, but there might be an expansion of it in potential collaboration with the Benguela current convention that will include Namibia and Angola up here on the west coast of our grid, since it covers more than just the 10 Nairobi Convention member states. And there are also talks about composing new symphonies like in Indonesia and Brazil. If you have any questions or thoughts coming up later, here's some contact information and links with more information about WIO Symphony if you're interested. So yeah, thank you all for listening to this Scene Society talk. I want to finish by thanking my colleagues that have been part of my internship with WIO Symphony for everything I've learned and the experiences I've had, but also the Center for Scene Society for the opportunity to do this talk. And now it's time for a Q&A. And I know there are some listeners here that are more invested in symphony than I am, so feel free to ask anything, and at least one of us should have an answer for you. Thank you.